Warriors! Welcome back, one and all, to the Brain Deads. Wow, the Brain Dead Sports Podcast. Um,
Clearly, we brain dead after the win.
yep. I guess my list after that, all the celebrations, all the El Dorado rum, all the dancing, it clearly went to my head. But nonetheless, it was a long wait. It was deserving party, and so just to get
At
a few
long last, by
late last Sunday. Um, the Amazon Warriors faced off against the Trinidad Knight Riders at the Providence Stadium game for the final of the 11th CPL, the Caribbean Premier League. Now, we previewed this game on the on when was that, last Friday or
I
last
think it
Saturday
was.
before
I
the
think it
game?
was like about 5 days ago. I think it was just
Yeah,
before the game. Yeah.
yeah, and we had a special guest on, a young up and coming cricketer by the name of Short Hoppy, who gave some analysis, and we all, even though biased, stated that we believe that the Warriors are finally going to raise the CPL trophy after failing to do so 5 previous occasions, even failing to do so against the Trinidad Knight Riders. Now, the game actually turned out to be way more convincing
One-sided.
on one side than I would have ever thought. Just to give you a quick rundown of the score, um, the Trinidad Knight Riders, they were put into bat first, and they managed to bat 18.1 overs, but only score 94. There was a defiant 38 by Casey Carty, and other than that, every batsman fell for below 20. The Warriors
Mhm.
bowling lineup did exceptionally well with, a few persons, struggling a bit, but nonetheless, it was such a battering that it didn't actually factor at all. So, Chris, what are your general thoughts on the game? Going into the game, how did you truly feel? I believe you were. What was the atmosphere like? How?
Yeah, I was. I was the atmosphere, man. It was um, it was definitely an experience.
Yeah,
As it relates to the game itself, I think I mentioned last week, and I think we were all in agreement. The key for this to run out as early as possible and get pot as quickly because we didn't think that they probably would have hit their big shots, but we didn't expect them to stay very long at the crease once
yeah.
Puran was out. So, and I think we executed that plan perfectly, like better than we could have ever expected.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't remember which over he was, but I believe it was very early in the power play.
Yeah.
And I even when he got out, I still
He
expected
fell at
Pollard or Russell to
in the
come in
fifth
maybe.
over.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
right. I remember I believe Azam Khan put down a catch just before that, and it was all like there was just silence in the entire ground, man. Gasps, like how could we have missed this
Yeah.
chance? And then
Yeah.
Pretorius just held his nerve that over. You have to give him
Mm-hmm.
credit. And
Mm-hmm.
catch.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
mean,
to have those two in succession, that
yeah.
I thought that. So credit to Pretorius, the man of the match, and yeah, I thought we planned perfectly to get as possible. Now I did expect like maybe when Pollard and Russell, when they came in, I expected like a quiet 30 or just a bolster the inning. That never came. We just continued the onslaughts, and it was a perfect start. I don't think we could have asked for a much better start.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I unfortunately I was not able to view the game in person, but I did watch it amongst
Academic commitments.
all yes, academic. I watched it amongst all Amazon Warriors supporters, And I would
Yeah.
not lie to you, that's probably the most nervous I've been probably since the West Indies were in the final of the T20 World Cup back in 2016.
T20 World Cup.
Like,
Hmm.
yeah, like legitimately, my hands were cold, my toes were cold. I was silent, like I had nothing to say. I was
Funny
just
enough, I
there.
wasn't nervous. Like before the game, like I was telling my friends who were at the game, when the toss, if we lose the toss, I'll be nervous. But when we won the toss and they said they were going to bowl first, I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, okay, this is our game. Like I just didn't feel nervous at all.
yeah. Well, that's actually something that we discussed, the toss being
Hmm.
key because one,
Yeah.
the ball gets really slippery later on at
Hmm.
Providence due to Jew. And the
Yeah.
second thing is that there was this ridiculously lopsided statistic where I believe only three of the 10 finals the team that bat first won. So
Hmm.
clearly chasing is something that is favored within the Caribbean Premier League. But
Within the format in general, I
yeah,
think, to
yeah,
be
because you
honest.
have that
Hmm.
total in your mind that you could
Yeah.
actually go out
Work towards.
and I
Yeah.
guess the pressure is not there on the bowlers when it comes to restricting as much as they would be uh, to
Hmm.
in terms of restricting in the second innings. But going into the game of itself, well, so I'm assuming that Martin Guptill's injury, he did not recover in time because he
Hmm.
did not play, and Viala and Chadwick Walton opened. And to be honest, I like initially seeing them coming in and their wickets fell fairly early, but it was like a 3-4 ball instance in where Dial was going at Pretorius, and I was like, even if
Yeah, I
they
think at
make
2.4 they had
170,
24.
yeah, they were
And that's
going at
like 10 and
about
over.
10, and one of
So
my friends actually
it
messaged me
seemed
and
to
it was
be a
like
good start.
they were like the message was like, why is it that that the Knight Riders have 24 after only 2 overs? And I was like, well, Lick sharing like that was literally. But as soon as I sat down in the apartment where I was watching the game, um, I believe they are out. So I didn't really have that. I didn't really get to see the boundaries being hit. But what I will say, the sequence to me that probably changed the game, as you mentioned, was when Puran came in and he was dropped by Azam. Now, generally, there's the
Hmm.
old cricket adage of catches win matches, and potentially he could have put us to the sword. But
Yeah.
it goes to show how good the Warriors were bowling that night. That literally, um, like 2 or 3 deliveries after he went anyway. Or you could say that Puran had poor shot selection, but I do
Hmm.
believe the line of lane that Pretorius was bowling was exceptional in that moment. But as the game went on, I mean, Casey Carty was very admirable because he started. I believe that if it wasn't for Casey Carty, they would have probably been bowled out for less than 70 runs, probably even less than 50, because the wickets were tumbling. Pollard went for duck. Aki Hussein came in and played a horrendous shot, went for
Yeah.
one. Paul Russell, who for a guy who's been in the game for so long as well, played a ridiculous shot, went for three. Bravo,
Yeah, I
Plum, and
think you
W.
should have seen out that oval. Hmm.
Yep. I do believe that the Trinbago Knight Riders will feel as though their team let them down, even though they played
Hmm.
excellent throughout the tournament. If you look at the scorecard, and if you remember how a lot of these dismissals came about, even though the bowling was tight, they also did not absorb the pressure as Casey Carty did, because I'm pretty sure if someone like Pollard had held their nerve till maybe the 14th or 15th over, even though they might have only had like 60, 70 odd runs, they could have then probably put the pressure back on the Warriors, scoring a score like 140 or so that would have at least been defendable. But 94 in a final, and you're also playing at the opponent's home ground, is not a defendable total at all.
Dismal.
Yep. As for the Warriors bowling, I
I
mean, the
mean, what
only
I have to
person
say
that
about the
was,
Knight
yeah,
Riders. Mhm.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I was just saying, like as I would say for the Knight Riders, it was a terrible night. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're four-time champions. Fair enough. The
Yeah,
best team in the history of the competition, all of that. But
yeah.
we'll hope against a long time.
Hmm.
You hear it?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. And I think the Knight Riders are a team that due to their history, it's a case where nobody would be truly disappointed. I do believe, though, that if the Warriors win again next year, they'll probably look back at that final and be like, yeah, we probably should not have allowed them to win
Mm-hmm.
that one. But in relation to
Mm-hmm.
the Warriors bowling, I believe that special mention needs to go to Pretorius and Shepard, who in the power play
Mm-hmm.
essentially restricted them to one of the worst totals in the history of the power play generally, not just in the CPL. That was an abysmal total in the power play. They put the pressure completely on the
Mm-hmm.
Warriors, and it wasn't just wickets because Pretorius got four and Shepard got one, which is five
Mm-hmm.
wickets. But they also Pretorius economy rate was 6.5 and Shepard was 5.6, and the bowler combined 7 overs. So not only were they losing wickets, but they were also restricted. The only person that has an economy rate above 7 is Beaton, and most of those runs came actually from Whites.
Yeah.
I guess it's a bit rust on the part of Beaton, but Gudi Kishimoto
Mm-hmm.
came in 2 wickets for
I
for
thought that was very
7 runs.
impressive, especially as, when you think about West Indies cricket in the long run.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I just really enjoyed Moti's innings, to be honest.
yeah.
Like, that was what I was most impressed with, I think,
Mhm.
just from the perspective of a West Indies fan.
Yeah, yeah, and also from the perspective of watching a player who's actually never played in a CPL final before. This is his first
Mm-hmm.
final. Some people
Yeah.
have played in finals before. I would also like to shout out the captain Imran Tahir for his exceptional bowling as well. He had an economy rate of
House
two.
and land.
Yep, house and land. Anything that
House and
Tahir
land.
won, he
House
yeah,
and land.
yeah.
Anything he wants in the country.
Yeah. He led by example, 4 overs, 8 runs. That is, and 2 wickets. That's
And it's the
monumental.
passion for me, like the
Yeah,
passion that he plays for this
yeah,
franchise with.
yeah,
You would
yeah.
think it's his national team.
Yeah, the way that I agree with you 100%. I also think the feeling, the exception of Assam dropped, and I would like to point out that Assam probably saved about 20 runs off the overs with Beaton
Yes,
when going down
yes,
the leg side with
yes.
some of those whites. But Shimra Hetmai
He
was
was
exceptional in
phenomenal
the
throughout
field
the
as well.
entire
Yep,
tournament.
yep.
Yeah, Hetty in the field the other night was
Yeah,
amazing.
that catch, I can't remember which batsman it was, but that sliding catch which
I
ended
think
the
it was
innings.
Carty.
Yeah, it might be
Wasn't it
case.
Carty? I think the last wicket.
Yeah,
And I just love how we reacted. Like, no celebration.
yeah,
Like,
because the job is
job
not
not
done.
finished. Let's
Yep,
just move on.
yep.
I
And
actually really love that because, like, Hetty normally, smiling,
Jovial, yeah,
celebrating,
yep,
not business until the end.
yeah. I would like to a special shout out to Kimo Paul, who
Mm-hmm.
essentially put his body and his career on the line to win a title, and that shows
Yeah.
passion and dedication. If a player in your squad is willing to sacrifice their body to the extent that Kimo Paul is willing to, I'm sure that
Mm-hmm.
lifted the spirit of the dressing room going into the final
Yep.
and put them
Agree.
in a mental state where if Kimo could do it, therefore we not only have to play to our ability, but above and beyond what we would normally give. And I think that was an
Mm-hmm.
exceptional performance all around team wise. Ayub and I think it was fitting that Ayub and Shehu finished the tournament first
Could we
because
just talk about that celebration, like that last ball, like off the six? Like,
yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a colder celebration than that.
It's like it's like when I saw it, it was like just
I was like,
applause. Like I had no words. Like I was just like, wow, wow. It's
see,
just
I was on
cool.
the ground, right? So
Mhm.
like as soon as everything happened, they're throwing up drinks
Yeah,
everywhere,
yeah.
and everybody was jumping. But like
Mhm.
I saw him on the ground, like just spread his arms. I was like, yeah, I didn't see the whole bat swing or anything,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Mhm.
after rewatching it was so cool, man.
Yeah, I mean, I saw because I was watching on TV. I saw the bat swing, and I was wondering in my mind, like, if this was something that was planned, or like if that's just off the cuff. But it was really fitting that Ayub and Hope brought it home
Yeah,
because they really were the ones who carried us for extended parts
the
of this tournament.
consistency
Yeah,
over the entire
consistently.
tournament was, yeah,
Yeah, they were essentially our opening pair, even though Hope was not an opening batsman. I think it was fitting
hmm
that Hope got the award. I think he got played tournament because that average of
yeah,
53 or whatever, that's exceptional, especially for a player who many labeled as not being a T20
not a
cricketer.
T20 player.
Yep, and
They,
he's currently one of
continue,
the
continue.
best in the region, if not the best.
The best in the region, in my opinion. And this brings me to my other question. Would you like to see him in an opening role for us in the upcoming T20 World Cup, or would you like him to be in like a number three role?
Um, That's actually a good question. Here's what I will say. Now, for me, I'm a huge fan of Evan Lewis. In the event that Evan Lewis is opening the batting, I would love to see Shea Hope and Evan Lewis as the opening pair because I believe there are two batsmen that are capable of rotating the strike, but Evan Lewis is so destructive that it would allow
Mm-hmm.
Shea Hope to play his natural game, which is more of a stroke player. I believe but in order for Hope to be an opening batsman, it would mean that Shimra Hetmeyer, Nicholas Puran, um, potentially someone like a Casey Carty or someone else needs to occupy that number 3, 4, and 5. And then we could go into the big hitters, maybe a Shepherd or whoever we fill in that role. But I do believe that whatever role we put um, hope in that we could expect good greatness. But it's a matter of if there's an opener that distinguishes themselves, whether and
Mm-hmm.
the problem is that from the opening pool is people there are persons like Fletcher and Johnson Charles who are not, even though they might perform occasionally, they're not consistent performers. So I believe we need that consistency at the top of the order. But we will see. I want to see. I mean, there's the experiment with Kyle Mears as well. But Kyle Mears has been abysmal recently in terms of, and he's been abysmal through this CPL as well. So
Mm-hmm.
with taking that into consideration, I would have hope there, unless we could have an opener that could match the quality of one like Evan Lewis at the top of the order.
No, that's exactly where I'm in agreement with you on. If Evan Lewis comes back, up to form,
Yeah,
you got me. But he hasn't been performing as of late, and it's been a while since he's worn the West Indies colors
yeah,
right
that's
now.
true.
So as of right now, I think based off of consistency and um, pairing, I would have to go with Hope and Brandon King opening for us at this point
Hmm.
right now. If Mayers comes back to farm, maybe he comes in, Hope
Hmm.
drops to three.
Hmm.
But your other question was if Puran would slide up to the number three spot. I have no problem with him batting there at this point,
Hmm.
honestly. I think Puran is a player that's capable of batting higher up in the order. But then
Hmm.
also you have to look at, the number four and the number five. Now you
Hmm.
have to slide up Hetmeyer. Now you have to look for like an Athanaze or a Casey Carty,
Hmm.
somebody that could boast to that middle order now. But there's also an option of sliding up, I think, maybe to like a number six or number seven spot. And I've been saying this the entire tournament. Romario Shepherd. I think he could
Yeah,
bat in that area as well.
yeah.
So I think our bat. Mhm.
I
Yeah,
would
go ahead.
agree with you. I think Romari Shepherd should always be the first all rounder that bats either
Hmm.
at the international
Yeah,
level or in regional cricket for me.
yeah. So yeah, I think. I think our dilemma is with the opening pair as of right now.
Hmm.
I think the middle order for us right now, I think that's okay, but well, not okay. We're the West Indies. We need to improve. Like
Generally,
we
across
need
the
to get
board.
we yes, across the board we need to improve with everything. But I think our our biggest worry is the opening pair. And I would like to see Sheho play as many deliveries in the innings as possible. And he is a
Mhm.
player that I trust the most in this team to not give away his wicket early
True,
and
but
anchor the innings throughout the entire, yeah.
one question I would have though, one, if we move Shepard up, where does the captain, Rovman Powell, um, bat? And secondly, do you actually consider Brandon King a genuine opener, or do you think he would be better off batting at like number three? But I mean, he's played in both positions at the regional level and at the international level. So what do you think about that?
I think King is our best replacement for Lewis right now, honestly. In terms of the profile, but he's not Evan Lewis. Given what we know and expect from Evan Lewis's best,
Yeah,
we know King doesn't come close. But in terms of
because he's not
profile,
as
like
destructive. Yeah.
yeah, the profile of player, he is right-handed, but in terms
Mhm.
of going after big shots, taking on bowlers, I like his profile as an opener, to be honest.
Yeah, I think ideally though, Brandon King and Evan Lewis would be a good opening pair with Hope coming at three, maybe
Hmm.
four, Puran five, Hetmaya six, Powell, and then seven, Romario
Seven
Shepherd
Shepherd.
would be a
Hmm.
good batting lineup. But the problem with the West Indies is that we never seem to be capable of getting our best 11 on the field at the same time because there's extended periods of time where Puran would be playing, and then when Puran is gone, Hetmaya is there, and when Hetmaya is gone, this person's not there. And you pointed up with Evan Lewis.
Yeah.
Evan Lewis got injured and essentially never West Indies for the
Hmm.
past 2 years or whatever it might be, and he left
Exactly.
he was informed. I think he's a bit
Yeah.
of an unfortunate cricketer who
There
seems to
was a
get
point where Evan Lewis was ranked in the top 10 for white ball cricket, like as a
because
batsman.
he was averaging. I mean, currently his average is 36 in ODIs as an opening batsman, which is actually reasonably good for an opening batsman specifically. Because not many opening batsmen in white ball cricket average over 40, and he averaged 36.9, almost 37, with 400s and 1050s. And those 400s, most of them came within the last 3 to 4 years prior to him
Yeah.
getting injured. So he's a player that probably should be like reintegrated into cricket, maybe in some kind of program. Only 31 years old. Players are playing
I
till
agree.
38 and at nine, in some instances 40. So it's not a case where he's an
Yeah.
old player, but at the same time,
And,
it's
mhm.
unfortunate that we do not have good backups because someone like Kyle Mears in the interim of Lewis being absent, because we're looking at left and right combinations here. As the left-handed batsman, he should have solidified his place in the interim. Instead, he's probably performed worse in this CPL than than Evan Lewis did. The only saving grace for Mayer is that he is a good utility bowler who can swing the ball and potentially be an asset on the bowling end. But in terms of batting, right now he's a complete liability.
Yeah, and I've been told that Mears has been consistent for a bit until his recent slump.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
we can't afford to go into a World Cup with players who are out of form, like
Yep.
to bet on those players that are out of form. So I think that's my issue with Lewis as well. But
Hmm.
like you said, even though this was a poor CPL by his standards as well, I
Yeah,
think we need to look at these players and try and reintegrate them and get them back up to form
true, true.
because we know what we can expect at their best, and that's something I think the West Indies in general has failed with over the years. As soon as a player hits a slump, you don't work with them. You just leave them out. You don't bet on them. You don't back them, and you
Yep.
know it just ends up being another what if story.
Yeah, and given the performance of a player like Kimo Paul, albeit we're speaking of a World Cup that's still next year, Kimo Paul as well should be in and around that team just off of his batting alone. And you might not want to have too many all-rounders, but Kimo Paul is a player
Mhm.
that definitely deserves a shout amongst the
Yeah, my issue with Chemo is will he remain fit? That's my only question with Chemo. Like for me,
yeah,
I've always known I've always known of his talent, to be
yeah.
honest. But it's always the question, is Chemo fit? Or if when he is fit, if he returns back to form.
That is a valid point. I also think Kimo plays a style of cricket um, that potentially could lead to injury constantly because he's always high octane. He's always going at 100. There's never a moment of relaxation, whether he's in the field, whether he's
Hmm.
batting. So he's almost like a
Yeah.
young Andre Russell, like that whole running, jumping, doing everything.
Hmm.
Speaking of
Yeah.
Andre Russell, do you think there's any way back for him into the international cricket?
No, I don't think so. I didn't see enough from, even though he did come back to play a decent tournament, I don't think it's
Mhm.
enough for me to integrate him back into the West Indies side at this point.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Maybe
That's
he can be
fair.
in the squad, but I don't think he's a part of my best 11 right now.
Okay. And given his injury record, that is also
Hmm. Yeah.
a fair assessment and a fair bit of skepticism on your part.
Hmm.
Is there anything else that you would like to mention specifically about the CPL final or the CPL as a whole that stood out to you, especially paying with respect to the upcoming World Cup next year?
I could probably talk about the CPL like throughout the entire, however long we have this podcast for, because I'm still high off of this win.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it for me for tonight.
Okay. Well, we have a lot of interesting topics for you all tonight, so we could call that a cold intro reviewing the CPL. But now we're going into the future, and we're going all the way to the UK for
Football makes
the
an appearance again
yes,
after
the
taking a
English,
break for about 2 weeks.
yeah, the English Premier League, and there's a lot of fixtures coming up. Specifically, um, we have Brighton and Aston Villa. We have United, Palace, Newcastle, Burnley. We have Manchester City taking on Wolves, which should not be a competitive game at all. We have Bournemouth, Arsenal, uh, Sheffield and West Ham, Luton Town and Everton. Somebody's getting relegated there. Tottenham and Liverpool, Fulham and Chelsea, which actually might be a very interesting game given Chelsea's form. There's Nottingham Forest and Brentford, and that would be
Like, I'm
that would
sorry
be
for laughing at
weekend.
that, but like there was a point in time where we wouldn't have even considered it competitive. But
Yeah,
the fact
yeah,
that now we're putting Fulham as a competitive game for Chelsea is just hilarious.
yeah. Their current form is saying a lot. However, let's just take a quick at the table. Sheffield, Burnley, and Luton are currently in the relegation zone, each
Hmm.
team having 1 point. In the top four, we have City, Liverpool, Brighton, who, interestingly enough, had an exceptional season last year, and they're continuing that form into this season. And Tottenham, who is rebounding remarkably after last season, who round up the top four.
Hmm.
Surprisingly, Arsenal is not in the top four after 6 games. We have
Hmm.
Villa, West Ham, who are both above Newcastle and Manchester United, who finished fourth and third, and Chelsea's all the way down in 14th. So, given the standings currently, how important do you think a game is like for Crystal Palace and Manchester United is? Because Crystal Palace is actually um, 1 point behind United currently on the table, which is another thing as a Manchester United fan that is embarrassing to say out loud. But given what was interesting about this fixture though is that Crystal Palace and
Hmm.
Manchester United played each other in the Carabao Cup
Mhm.
which ended 3-0, I believe, which saw Casemiro scoring and assisting, I believe. And
I believe you tried the double pivot with Amrabat then as well, right?
yeah, I'm just gonna start off the bat. The only
Yeah.
other game
How was
that
that?
the only other game that I think that we played okay at any
Mhm.
point during this season would have been when we played against Arsenal, which we had some stretches where we actually were
Mhm.
okay. The Bayern game was
Yeah.
strange to analyze in general because the scoreline and the possession and everything was odd. But this game might be the best that we have been in terms
Mhm.
of balance. This was the first game in which a team did not run through our midfield because we actually had people in the midfield who with legs, but as well as
Mhm.
physicality. I do believe, and the story behind Christian Eriksen coming back after his heart attack and all these things is acceptable. But I think the
Yeah.
experiment of playing Christian Eriksen as a box play has completely failed, and it has failed worse in this
Mhm.
season than it did last
Yeah.
season. And I believe coaches have realized the weakness because I believe last season Ericsson was given a bit of leeway. He was allowed to roam, and he was not pressed
Mhm.
like how he's being pressed this year by opposition midfielders. And I think that was the main reason we looked so porous against Wolves. That's the main reason Tottenham ran us ragged because our midfield looked thin.
Mhm.
It's like teams are essentially going from defense to attack in a blink of an eye against us. And it wasn't even a counter. They're literally just passing through our midfield. Now, this game in which Amrabat played about three different positions. Now, he played as a left back, but then he was tucking into the midfield to support the midfield. And then when a substitution was made, he came in the double pivot with um with
Mhm.
Casemiro, and I believe Hannibal was playing as a 10. And I think that was probably the most secure midfield was. If you replace Hannibal, who's an upcoming talent, probably only like 20 or 21 years old, with a player like Bruno, I do believe we would compete way better against the big six than we have done so far. I do believe Amrabat is the key to us
Mhm.
not getting bullied in the midfield. It doesn't mean it will translate into wins, but I don't think that the porous nature of our midfield, because our midfield was essentially a sea. It wasn't a midfield, it was a sea field. You could have just passed through. Only thing that wasn't passing through our midfield was teams that play along the wing, and that's just me being frank. So I think that's the best we performed. I actually think that Anthony being away was probably a blessing because it gave Palestri the opportunity to play like a winger plays, and
Mhm.
Garnacho objectively has played two games now, I believe, in a row, or one game he played and he came as a sub game before, whatever it was, is showing twice the effort as Rashford and
Mhm.
is looking more sharp on the offensive end than Rashford. I'm not saying that he's not a better player than Rashford yet, but he definitely
Yeah.
deserves to play in front of Rashford currently. And this is probably the best Martial's
Mhm.
looked in about
Mhm.
since his
That was
first
actually a
season.
hot take.
Which one? The one with
That's actually
Rashford
kind of a hot
or
take. The one
Martial?
with Garnacho actually deserving to play over Rashford.
I believe so. I think Rashford
Yeah,
is
right now.
suffering
Mhm.
from his own internal pressure. I believe he thinks that
Mhm.
he needs to score a game, and there are many instances where you just need to square the ball to an open man. Like there was a sequence of play in which the goal which Garnacho scored was because
Mhm.
Palestri got a pass from Amrabat, I believe, which was a good
Mhm.
switch of play from the left to the right.
Mhm.
Instead of trying to shoot, which Anthony probably would have done, he passed the ball along the wing to an overlapping Dalot, who is probably our most underrated player. And I have a whole hot take that I'm going to give on Dalot in a few. But anyway, and Dalot crossed the ball flat along the ground, which is something that we don't do, which is just crossing the ball competently.
Mhm.
And Garnacho scored. Now, there were about 4 or 5 plays in previous games in which Rashford was essentially in the position of Dalot, and all he needed to do was square the ball and he tried to shoot. or waited too
Mhm.
long and then was forced to attempt to dribble a player that had support. And I don't believe I think it's because in his mind, 30 goals is on his mind. And he knows that if
I
he had
do think
scored,
Rashford has blinders on at times, definitely. Like,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you, but like,
yeah,
I just have to agree with that point. I think sometimes he does have like blinders on. Like,
yeah,
sometimes he could just square the ball to a man in the middle
yep,
and probably get a higher percentage shot, but he just goes for goal.
yep.
But I don't think that hunger is necessarily bad. I
No,
think
I
it
don't
will
think it's
help
bad.
Man U later on in the season. But yeah, sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No, but what I was saying in conclusion though is that
Mhm.
he needs to essentially just think less about, okay, if I don't score, United is going to lose. Just think more about
Mhm.
about
Yeah.
making the right play. It's not a
Mhm.
case where you have to score these amazing solo goals like last season. Players who were
Agreed.
immature last season, you should trust them, give them the opportunity, pass them.
Mhm.
Because, but I feel like it's a bit playing on his mind. As for Delo, I feel like going into last year's World Cup, and people have all forgotten this.
He's very good offensively.
Yeah, going into last year's World Cup, there was this thing about where everyone was raving about Delo. Delo actually displaced Cancelo in Portugal's starting 11 during the World Cup, and then he got injured.
Mhm.
Now, players coming back
Yeah.
from injury for some reason in modern times are expected to play to the level that they played just before
Mhm.
injury due to the
Before.
recency bias of fans. Obviously, he was not good. He was getting rinsed completely defensively. He wasn't making good
Mhm.
decisions offensively. And it gave the opportunity to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who was essentially on the chopping block, to come back and show that he had improved
Mhm.
offensively. However, here's my theory, right, about this, right?
Mhm.
If this was street football in which we were playing 1v1s all the time, I would love to have Aaron Wan-Bissaka in my team. But when it comes to
Mhm.
far post
Yeah.
defending or near post defending, Aaron Wan-Bissaka is cheeks positionally and gets rinsed all the time. Anytime a competent team crosses the ball, while Delo,
Mhm.
during his time in Italy, in a league that objectively prides itself on
He's
defense,
known for defense.
he's
Yeah.
actually much better defending in a four, as in like, okay,
Mhm.
1v1, he's nowhere near the talent of our Wan-Bissaka, but defending as a team, he's much better in terms of defending the box.
Team positioning. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there was literally a cross into a very good cross into our box by can't remember the player name in the Crystal Palace game. I knew for a fact that Delo defended that ball in a way that Aaron Wan-Bissaka would not have been capable of because he would not have been in that position because he's a 1v1 player. And as it relates to offense, there's no competition there. I think Delo is an underrated player, and I do believe he's another
Mhm.
player that Anthony no longer being there, I do
Mhm.
believe to some extent Anthony suffers from playing with Aaron Wan-Bissaka in terms of not having that overlapping.
I think Anthony slows up that right side a bit too much. He
Mhm.
tries, to do too much basically to beat the man. Sometimes you just need to keep it like just keep it pushing.
Yeah,
Anthony just, stagnates the offense on that right for me.
yes.
And I think now without Anthony, it allows Delo to move
Delo
a
and
bit more
Pellistri,
freely.
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
I agree with you. I
I,
agree with
I I think you'll see a more fluid offense coming off the right side.
you. Yeah, but interestingly, in the media today, it was reported that Anthony is returning to the squad. I don't believe that means that he's going to be in the 11 because it would be a bit ridiculous for you to not be training and then come back and play. But I do believe that okay, and the one other player I would like to point from Christopher Hall's game is Mount. This was Mount's only
Mhm.
good game. I won't say that this was his best game because that would imply that he played good in other games. But this is his only good. Like he actually looked like a world class football player who played in the semifinals of a World Cup once. And the only reason that happened was because one, Casemiro, one of the greatest defensive midfielders, was behind him in a position next to another competent box to box slash pivot who allowed
Mhm.
Monk to just do whatever you want to do. So forward, if we play a formation, right, that requires a pivot, we have to play Amrabat and Casemiro. And Casemiro's distribution was amazing
Mhm.
because he wasn't being overrun and he wasn't winded from being the
Yeah.
only competent
Hmm.
defensive player in the team. And I do
Yeah.
believe that either we play Mount outright or Bruno doesn't play, which cannot happen. So it's a
Hmm.
case where I do believe the potential for Mount is probably to be outright or to play as a floating player somewhere in there. The left has to be Garnacho. I do believe he has to start. Our defense is in shambles due to injury, but Varane
Hmm.
is back. Varane has to play probably next to Lindelof, Dalot on the right, and our left back. Reguilon is not particularly good defensively, but I do believe that we're playing against Crystal Palace after all. So you could allow for that defensive shoddiness
Hmm.
with someone like Amrabat in the team. So I expect a win, but I don't
Hmm.
expect another 3-0. Maybe a 1 or 2-0 victory. I would expect in this game.
I honestly think this will be a game that Man U should dominate. Here's why. So I basically agree with what you said. Apart from Rashford not starting, I think you should start him.
Mhm.
Um, but this goes back to what we said since like the first episode. I think I told you like we had Casemiro as the lone pivot, and
Yeah,
he's being left on an island by himself. So that's what's
yeah,
happening before Amrabat comes in, right? You have Mount, you have Bruno, you have Ericsson. In my opinion, these are three players who I like to call final third merchants.
yeah, yeah,
So they wouldn't advance the ball from the defense and bridge the gap between like the defense and the attack. They
yeah. They would
work
not
in the
be.
final third. That's their specialty there,
Yeah,
right?
I agree with
But
you
you
on.
have an Amrabat, someone that could, help Casemiro bolster the defense when needed and also allow, progression to the final third where these players can excel. I think that's very good for United. And also, I think a fact that we overlooked is what it means for the fullbacks. You now have two attacking fullbacks, right? They aren't particularly known for their defensive abilities. However, they do advance a lot. Now, this also helps, like maybe Casemiro and Amrabat can, just go back, fall back, and fill in their slots when they advance as well. And this can probably lead to like a cross into Hoyland, maybe playing into Bruno, him making that final third
Yeah,
movement and, you know, allowing more goals for United now. So I
yeah.
think I expect a big improvement from United. It's just now up
Mhm.
to Ten Hag to employ the right tactics.
Yeah, I agree. Well, from there, we could move on to do you want to talk about Brighton Villa just quickly? Who do you think is gonna come out on top? I mean,
I actually
Villa,
expect a goal fest for this game.
yeah,
Um, I think I'm expecting 2-2. I think Matoma has been informed. Diaby has been good.
hmm
Watkins has been scoring well, and the fullbacks,
hmm
Cash, Estupinian, they've had good starts,
yeah,
and I think they're teams that have been coached well so far.
yeah. I expect. I mean, this is actually an important game because in the
Hmm.
event that it's a draw, as you predicted, it would mean that teams like Tottenham,
Hmm.
Arsenal, and could potentially leapfrog Brighton and go into
Yeah.
the top four,
Hmm.
and potentially start putting some daylight between them and the challengers like Man United and Newcastle. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a goal fest as well. Though I'm inclined to give this slight edge to Brighton. However,
Hmm.
it's not a
That's
case
fair.
where I'm 100% sure, but it's
Yeah.
definitely going
Hmm.
to be a competitive game. Newcastle Burnley. How do you think about that?
Very competitive game, I think. Very competitive. I think Burnley will win 4. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Um, so
So
yeah,
remember
I expect
Newcastle is coming
Newcastle
off the
to.
8-0 right now.
Yeah, I think this should be an easy win for Newcastle. I mean, you do have the possibility that Botman may not play. He's been a big part for them for this start,
Yeah.
but I don't think that would hinder them too much. I believe he has been in training. And
Mm,
Burnley is a team that, they've struggled with the overlapping fullbacks. So I expect a big
yeah,
game from Trippier.
yeah. Well, Trippier's class
And
regardless of the team. So
I don't know if Isak is fit,
yeah.
but yeah, if he is, I do expect some returns from him as well.
I think that quick on Burnley. You think that Burnley is going to survive this season, or you think they're going down?
I think my team, like early prediction for relegation,
Hmm.
I have right now Burnley, Luton, and Everton as of right now.
Oh, so you
Those are my
expect Sheffield
predictions for.
United to survive?
Listen, I'm biased towards Sheffield because I have Cameron Archer in my FPL.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Fair.
that's
Fair.
that's the only reason. That's the only
Okay.
reason. But I think any of those four, I think three of them are going down.
Okay. Well, now we're on to Wolves and Man City. Now, this is an interesting game because Wolves is a
Yeah,
team that I
interesting.
always think that they are a team that you could count on to grind out a draw against a Big Six team on their day. But I never really expect them to beat a Big Six team, but they usually make it more difficult than it needs to be. However, this is City that we're talking about, and you could
Mhm.
turn on a TV and it would be 33 minutes, and City is leading 4-0 with a hat trick by Haaland. So, however, if Wolves to get a result here, it could ignite the title race very early on because City are only
Mhm.
leading by 2 points. So, what do you think? Is there any possibility that Wolves could
Are
get a
we
point from
expecting that
this?
to happen?
Um,
For me, to be honest, I don't expect City to drop any points here. But like you said,
yeah,
it could be very interesting.
yeah.
I
I
feel like
mean,
Wolves. I feel like Wolves are a team where they're either really good or they're really bad on the day.
yep,
And if they're really good, that really good usually leads to a draw instead of a win.
yeah, yep. So,
But I think a
that's
draw against City would be a fantastic result for them
yeah, it really would.
and for the
Um,
rest of us in the race.
in the race, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
I expect City to win 3-0, even though they're away. Next
Yeah,
game, there's Bournemouth and
that's fair.
Arsenal. Now, this is also interesting due to the relegation race because Bournemouth currently sitting at
Mhm,
17,
mhm.
2 points above relegation, 1 point below Wolves, who is playing City. So, in the event that they could get a point from this as well, they would also leapfrog um, Wolves and see themselves a bit further um, away
Mhm.
from the relegation zone. However, how do you feel about Arsenal this season? I mean, they were almost champions last year. They're currently sitting at 14 points. They have 2 draws, 3 wins in their last 5. Do you think that
Honestly,
they're
like
actually going
I,
to challenge again, or you think that this is going to be a fight for
I
top
think it's
4?
still early. But I think early in the season, the whole revamp with the defense. I didn't understand Gabriel not starting. I mean, you had a good partnership with him and Saliba all throughout last season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you wanted to just throw Timber in there.
Mm.
Granted, Timber did come off with an injury, and
Yeah, I believe he ruptured his
basically we
ACL,
ended
right?
up, yeah. Mhm. But I didn't see the need to, change anything with the starting lineup. It's good that you have depth. You bolster the squad fair enough, but I don't know why Arteta tinkered with the starting lineup from the start of the season. And I also see now Raya has replaced Ramsdale potentially as the number one goalkeeper.
Yeah, I've seen
I
that as
don't know
well.
what's going on there.
Mm.
Because I thought Ramsdale was fantastic for them for the
Last
last
season.
2 seasons.
Mm.
But
But I guess it
with
comes back
regards
to
to
the
this
whole,
week,
yeah.
mhm.
I was gonna say I
Yeah,
guess
with
it comes back
regards
to
to
the
this
whole
week,
sign of two number one keepers. But yeah, this week,
yeah, yeah, with this week, I do expect them to win against Bournemouth. They may be missing Saka,
yeah,
but if you can't put in a result even without your best player
against
against
Bournemouth,
Bournemouth,
yeah,
then you shouldn't be thinking about contending for the Premier League title, in my opinion.
yeah. Do you think they'll be affected this season by playing not in the Europa but in the Champions League
The
instead?
Champions League.
Yeah,
I don't expect them to last very long in the Champions League, to be honest. So I don't think coming down to the end,
Yeah.
I don't think coming down to the
Well,
end,
we'll save
it
that
would be much.
for our Champions League predictions coming up next. So we also have West
I
Ham and
mean, they
Sheffield.
could surprise me. I won't lie, they could surprise
Yeah,
me.
true. There's
It would
West.
be a laugh if they ended up eliminating Real Madrid. But
I don't see
anyways,
that happening. But West Ham and Sheffield United. This is actually a game that I expect West Ham to absolutely trounce Sheffield United. They're playing at
yeah,
home, and they've been fairly good. They started off the season well, and it's which is
Ward-Prowse has been very good for them, I think.
yeah. It's
We knew about
actually.
Bowen, but Ward-Prowse has been fantastic for them. It's been a really good signing for them so far.
One thing I will say, the way that West Ham is run is actually quite interesting, and it's actually maybe a model that
Hmm.
teams that are trying to come back or to regain form of prominence, like teams like Manchester
Hmm.
United could look at, because they sold
Yeah.
essentially their best player for the past 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 years,
Yeah.
in Declan Rice, and
Hmm.
they replaced him with a player who has always been acknowledged as a good player within the Premier League in Ward-Prowse. But their
Hmm.
performances so far, you could argue, is even better than they started previous seasons with Rice in the team, because they were fighting relegation, I believe, last season, was it? So this is actually interesting, and maybe a coach like Moyes, we need to start looking at him
Hmm.
closer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think he's done really well at the start of the season. And speaking of a team that's been doing well since, selling their best player,
mm,
Tottenham plays Liverpool as
yeah.
well
Yep, and
this
that
weekend.
is
I
that
think
is the
that's the
game.
matchup of the weekend.
That is the game. Yep, that is the game.
Battle of the unbeaten.
Yeah, I don't know. Tottenham playing at home, so there's always the home
Hmm.
field advantage.
Yeah.
Um, Bissouma,
And
I
I
believe, is leading the league in tackles and interceptions.
mhm,
He is a player that I believe Manchester United should have signed years ago,
mhm.
but
Um,
um,
I wanted them at Liverpool for I think about 3 seasons ago as well.
yeah.
Like when he was at Brighton. Yeah.
Mhm. I see this game potentially ending as a 2-2 draw, though, because I expect Son to score, and I expect
That is my fear.
yeah,
But
I don't see this game
as
going either way.
I I don't see like I don't like what I've seen from Liverpool's defense so far this season.
Mm,
But Salah is, I think he's back to his best. Well,
mm,
not his absolute best, but you know,
mm.
he was in like a bit of a slump last season, but
Yeah,
now he seems to be out of that. And
yeah,
yeah, I do expect him and Son to get a return. Son, if fit, of course. He did pick up a knock, I think, in the midweek, but I think he'll play this game. It's a big fixture, and the
yeah.
result here would be big for either team.
I do believe if Liverpool could beat Tottenham, it would bode well for them going forward,
Hmm.
potentially
Yeah,
in the title race, even
definitely.
though they don't seem on paper, you would expect City to probably run away with it again. But if they could
Hmm.
show that they're capable, why not playing at their best just yet? Remain undefeated and beating Tottenham away, who has been playing exceptional football after selling their best player. This is probably key.
Yeah.
Um, it would be something, but I expect this game to end as a 2-2 draw. So the last two fixtures, we'll save Chelsea for last because they deserve special analysis. But there's Nottingham Forest and Brentford. Now, Brentford is a team that, like Brighton, was playing exceptionally well last season. They're currently down in 13th, and they have essentially only won 2 games out of the 6, so they have 6 points from 6 matches. So they're not. Well, we could probably chalk this down to them missing their best player. So clearly, missing your best player and selling
Mhm.
your best player does not have the same effect. So
And
how
they
do
also lost Rico Henry to an ACL injury.
yeah
I think he was like their best fullback.
yeah
So I think that's a big loss for them.
Yeah, I mean the ACL injuries this year in sports in general
Yeah.
is something to note. I'm not sure what the
Mhm.
science behind that, but it's definitely something across the NFL, football,
Yeah,
and so on. But
everywhere,
yeah,
everywhere.
but
Like this is I
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was saying like this is like the season where I've seen like the most ACL injuries ever.
Hmm.
Like, it's something rare, like you'd see one or two a year, but like all of a sudden now it's like every team has an ACL injury.
Yeah. Well, based on form, it could be argued that Nottingham is in bad form, even though they only have one more point than Brentford, because they have two wins in their last three, while within
Mhm.
their last three, Brentford has three. They have two draws and one win. So even though they've been undefeated and Nottingham has lost in that interim period, Nottingham seems to be able to get wins. But
Mhm.
I think this game could potentially be a draw as well, because I do think that Brentford is still the better team than Nottingham Forest. But
Yeah, agree.
but Nottingham Forest is playing home and they are coming off of a win. So maybe this could be a draw, but I would not be surprised if Brentford takes it. I would say that if Ivan Tony was here, I would say that this would be a clear win for Brentford. But he's not. So this is
Mhm.
a more competitive game. What's your take on that?
I do think it can be tricky for Brentford without Rico Henry. I mean, Awani, the striker for Nottingham Forest. Forgive me for butchering the name, but he's been in form as well. And you also look across the board. There's also Brian Mbomo,
Mm.
who's also in form for Brentford. So I think it can go either way. I do expect this to be maybe a 2-1 win for Brentford, though.
Okay. Well, Ivan Tony, I believe will be in the headlines. So just a quick Google search of the game would show that numerous teams in London are interested: Arsenal, Chelsea,
Hmm.
and this we could perfectly segue into Chelsea, who clearly need a striker. So Chelsea are currently sitting all the way down in
I think
16.
midweek was their
Well,
first
14.
goal
Yeah,
in like this month
yeah. So goal
or
scoring is
2 months or
still
something like that.
there. Chelsea is currently sitting at 14th. They have a negative goal difference. They are on 5 points from 6 games, and they have only one win in their last five. And only one of those was a draw as well, so they're just losing games. So
Pathetic.
another thing that
So
we
how much?
should point out about Chelsea before we actually analyze this
Mhm.
specific game is that after the Chelsea Fulham fixture, Chelsea go on to play Burnley next Saturday, then Arsenal, then Brentford. They play Blackburn in the the EFL Cup, sorry.
Mhm.
Then they play Tottenham, Man City, Newcastle, Brighton, Manchester
Hmm.
United, then Everton. So their upcoming fixture list is actually going to get worse before it gets better potentially at home against Everton. So how do you feel about them going into this weekend?
That's the thing with Chelsea. I think to open the season, they had one of the easiest schedules. So now when
Yeah,
you look down the line and now when it gets tougher, how do you cope with that? So
yeah,
for a Chelsea fan, it doesn't look too good. But also, I think you need to look at how much of this would you attribute to their injury list. They have a lot of players out,
yeah. They're definitely
but
missing Nkuku.
in my opinion, you should have had better results against some of these teams regardless.
Yep.
Um, Given all the money you spent, all of this
Hmm.
depth you have, because I thought this was one of the deepest rosters going into the league, and the
It
players just
still
aren't
is.
performing.
It
The
still is.
manager, the manager just doesn't seem to, have a set philosophy for the players to follow.
Mm.
But and it comes down to individual performances as well. They've been terrible. Nicholas
So
Jackson hasn't been good in front of goal.
um, so going back to the manager before, because I also want to discuss Nicholas Jackson. But in retrospect, I mean, hindsight is always 2020. But there were
Mhm.
many persons who were skeptical on the appointment of Mauricio Pochettino, who only has ever won um, the League One trophy with a team that always wins the League One trophy. So, how do
Mhm.
you think that he was the right man for the job, or do you think that was a mistake?
Honestly, I would have my pick would have been Nagelsmann over
Hmm.
Poch, but I don't think Nagelsmann wanted the job. So maybe maybe Poch was the best manager available given the big
The
name managers,
circumstances, yeah,
the managers that we know,
yeah,
right? That we would expect to manage the big clubs. I
yeah,
think Poch was probably the best one available and the only one not on the contract. So Todd Bowley just decided to like spend money there.
yeah. Well, I mean, this is actually Chelsea are in an interesting conundrum because it's almost like if, regardless of the manager, they seem to be losing. And once again, we will always have to harp on this and come back to this that maybe they should not have gotten rid of Thomas Tuchel, who essentially
Hmm.
had a team that just
Big
came off
mistake.
of winning the Champions League.
Hmm.
Speaking of Nicholas Jackson, though, and we could couple Mudryk into this list as well. Do you think these are players that are going to come good going forward, or do you think that maybe they need to start looking elsewhere? I mean, Mudryk is a big money signing, so I don't expect them to start looking away from him anytime soon. But Chelsea are not known for sticking by their academy graduates. If you look at players like Hudson-Odoi and so
Yeah.
on, who were filled with talent and probably is better than a lot of these players that they're fielding now, but he was shipped away
Hmm.
the moment he did not seem like if he was producing as well as players like Ruben Loftus-Cheek. So, how
Yeah.
long do you think they're going to stick by Jackson and Modric?
I really don't know, and honestly, I really don't care. But I, I think I think the way you need to look at it, you spent a lot of money on these players for a reason, so you need to back them at this point as much as you can. And if not, you just have to cut your losses because I mean I don't think you'd get the same return from Mudryk right now if you decided to sell him. And I
True.
actually don't think Mudryk has been quite bad. He
Mm.
hasn't been living up to the whole $100 million signing, or
But then they
I can't
probably
remember how much they
overpaid
bought him for.
for him to begin with.
Like, like never understood that deal honestly. 100 million for a player that wasn't in one of the top five leagues. I thought that was always a risk. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if it was 100 million, but I do remember thinking that the price was ridiculous.
Yeah. But so for this weekend, there are predictions. I mean, Fulham, they're currently in 11th. They're on 8 points, so technically they're not doing that well
Mhm.
either. Um, on recent form, they have not won in their last 3 games, 2 losses and a draw. So maybe this should be an opportunity for Chelsea to pick up some points. So I would think that I would give the slight edge to Chelsea, even though they're playing away. I think they're probably gonna take this one maybe 1-0.
I think also they've benched Chilwell and now Chilwell is injured. I think that's another loss for them. I don't know why they benched him in the first place,
Mm.
but I expect another draw to be honest.
Okay.
0-0.
All right. Well, that rounds up the fixtures for the English Premier League. Um, well, we from here we could briefly discuss the investigation of Barcelona. Currently, now Barcelona again are being investigated for bribing referees. Now,
Hmm.
famously, there was the incident in 2008, I believe, when Drogba said, it was a disgrace. The refereeing was a
Yeah,
disgrace,
it was a disgrace.
and so on. And now we're back here again, over 10 years later, and
Hmm.
Barcelona is still being called in refereeing scandals. Now, we both know that Barcelona are not going to be banned from football. At best, they're going to
Exactly,
be fined,
exactly.
and worst case scenario, they're going to be absolved from all wrongdoing. So first of all, let me ask you this: do you think one that Barcelona is actively bribing referees? And two, do you think that there will be any punishment in the event that is the case?
Have they bribed referees in the past? Maybe. I do think that final against, I think it was a semi-final against Chelsea. I think
Yeah, it
that
was a
was very
semi-final. Yeah,
suspect.
yeah,
Yeah, it was very suspect. And there was also one against Arsenal. I think
yeah.
that possibly robbed Arsenal of
The Champions League
what
trophy.
may have
Yep,
been their first Champions League trophy.
yep.
But honestly, I don't think Barca has any money to bribe any referee right now. I
True.
don't think it's something that's currently ongoing.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I haven't really followed up with this entire situation because I don't expect there to be any punishment. I think when you're a club with as much prestige as Barcelona, there's always some, you know,
yeah.
untouchability from
Mm,
certain things. But if it does turn out to be, a bribery case, I wouldn't, you can't afford to ban them from football. That would be bad for the sport, or
mm,
relegate them, because that would be bad for La Liga in general, which is basically a two-man league. I
yeah.
mean, you could introduce Atletico into the conversation, Real
Mm,
Betis for probably some, Sevilla, but it's basically Barca and Madrid.
yeah.
So I would
I
love,
mean,
if they are found guilty, I would love to see them just, maybe take back some of the trophies that they would have won.
yeah.
But I think that's the max punishment that should be given out,
Well,
because you
I,
need to look at what it means to the sport as well.
yeah, I definitely agree with you that they're probably not actively bribing referees, but in the past they may have been complicit.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I do not expect them to be banned, relegated, or even fined, actually, because if we look at Manchester City, who probably definitely committed all of those allegations, somehow managed to be completely free from all
Hmm.
wrongdoing. And if we're going to be objective, Manchester City does not have the prestige as a Barcelona, but they do have the economic and
The money,
financial
yeah.
backing. But a club like Barcelona is like one of the pillars of the footballing economic industry as a brand. So
Hmm.
I believe the only team in the position of Barcelona that has ever been truly banned like that would have been Juve, and
Yeah.
technically they were also punished again recently, which is interesting. Maybe
Hmm.
I mean I guess too in the context of Juve, Serie A has at least six teams that are iconic in nature. But speaking of iconic Serie A teams, we could go on to the scandal with Victor Osimhen, who objectively was, if not their best player last season, was probably their second best player, at least the catalyst for them winning their Scudetto
Yeah,
after
I think he
30
was their
years.
best player.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now there's the whole TikTok from their official page, and there's him scoring but refusing to celebrate. So
Give me
what
penalty.
yeah, like well, how do you think what do you think how do you think about Napoli's actions, and also do you think that Osimhen is going to be in Naples come next season?
Honestly, like, I thought it was disgraceful for them to post something like that about their best player. When you look at the accounts for all the other major teams, they
Yeah,
always post something uplifting about their best player. And
yeah,
this one just seemed to, like, maybe the admin thought it was just a bit of humor, but
mm,
you need to also look at this as a player that, as a player that you want to keep, a
yeah,
player who has been there for a while,
mm,
and you want to show him that he's appreciated. So
yeah.
I don't get the actions of the admin there.
Yeah, same. I mean, technically, we cannot say that the actions of the admin are a reflection of the club, but it's
Mhm.
still
Yeah,
attached to the
definitely not.
name of the club. And
Yeah,
I do believe
it's
that it
under the
was,
club's account and name.
yeah, I do believe it was disgraceful, and that person should be reprimanded. And I don't think that that's the way for you to support a player that essentially, because with the exception of Kava, he's the only real, he's the to them winning. Like he is
Yeah.
the MVP of that team, and most people would not have expected him to still be in Naples after
Hmm.
um, his performance. Many people thought he would have taken the big money move somewhere, and he did not. So that in itself is a reason for them to be
He's a
grateful.
player I would love at Real Madrid, either during the January window or sometime. But we don't care about the winter window, so
Yeah. Yep.
that's just false hope.
Well, speaking of the winter window, I mean, some teams may be making moves during the winter window depending on how they are performing in the Champions League. Now, the Champions League is back, and objectively, this is the biggest club trophy, at least in Europe, if we're gonna be,
Yeah.
before Noah Lyles comes attacking us. But the Champions League is back in swing. I mean, upcoming this Tuesday, we have Union Berlin against Braga. We have Leipzig, Real Sociedad, PSV, Sevilla, Inter, Benfica, Copenhagen, Bayern, United, Galatasaray, Lens and Arsenal, Napoli, and Real Madrid, which is would objectively be the fixture of the week.
Yep.
Atletico against Feyenoord, and another interesting fixture would be Dortmund, Milan, Newcastle, PSG, and to some extent Leipzig and City. So let's start off with let's look at Napoli and Real Madrid. This is
Ah,
well, first off, Napoli is still once again in the headlines here. Um, this is at
I think
home in Naples, so that's one thing you need to factor
I
in.
think to have a fallout with the star at this point, just before this big match day,
Yeah.
I think that definitely puts you at a bit of a disadvantage. But you know what? I don't think it will impede Osimhen much. I do expect him to be a professional, and
Hmm.
he'll come out and play his best game. But for the club in general to have all this negative press just before this big matchup against the best team in the competition's history,
Yeah.
um, is not a good look. So I think, but as it relates to the game, I expect it to be a competitive game.
Yeah.
We lost Alaba over the weekend, Real Madrid,
Mm.
that is.
Yeah.
That's a big blow. So that's another starting defender who's gone down. And Vinny has returned from injury. I expect a decent game from him. We rested Bellingham over the weekend. He should be back fresh. Brahim has been performing well as of late. He got his first earned start over the weekend. I think off the bench he provides an impact. With regards to Cruz and Modric, off the bench, I think you may start one of them. I think Cruz may need to start this game just to offer some control in the midfield. But I think Modric has lost the starting spot, definitely, given
Hmm.
how well Tchouameni, Valverde, and Camavinga have been performing so far for me this season. I don't know if Modric has the legs to just keep up for a full 90 minutes week in, week out, every other match day.
Hmm.
I do think he's still better than maybe 90% of midfielders out there.
Yeah.
But for a team like Real Madrid as of right now, I don't think he's that starting caliber player for us every single week.
Okay. So, given the injuries, do you think that Real Madrid can go up to the way? You think that Napoli are gonna get
I,
it?
I think it will be a hard win. I don't expect us to be fully dominant the entire game. I do expect Napoli to have their fair share of chances.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm a bit hesitant because we don't have Courtois in goal right now. It's Kepa.
Hmm.
Um, Kepa hasn't been bad so
Hmm.
far, but he's not the shot stopper that Courtois is by any means.
And
And
well, I
especially
don't
with
think
so
anybody
many,
in the world is the
yeah,
shot
with
that
true, with
Courtois at
so
the moment.
much, yeah, and with so much of our defense missing, I do expect Napoli to have a lot of chances, and Kepa will definitely be put to the test, I expect. Um, the left back position is a bit up for grabs since Mendy has returned from injury, but I expect Fran Garcia to start this game. He would be my pick to start. And Carvajal is back after being after being missing from with injury for like the last 2 or 3 games. So yeah, I do think Real Madrid should win this game, and my prediction is 3-1.
I am not entirely sure that Madrid are going to win this game, given the
Mm-hmm,
injuries. I wouldn't be surprised if Napoli takes it. And I
mm-hmm,
don't necessarily believe that this game is going to be like a major reflection of the tournament going forward, like, whether or not we
mm-hmm.
should expect Real Madrid to
Yeah,
do well or not. So, given taking all that, I won't be surprised if Napoli takes it, but I would predict probably a close draw, maybe 2-2. I would expect Osimhen to
mm-hmm.
get one and probably do some strange celebration, but I would expect him to get one, but given the pedigree of Real Madrid, you never know. But I do think Napoli are going to perform well and bounce back from the scandal. But coming off from this, we could go to United and Galatasaray, and Galatasaray,
Just something I forgot to mention.
yeah,
For this game, I don't really like the matchup of Carvajal against Kvara.
hmm
That because as of late, Carvalho is coming back from injury, and then we know how good Kvara is on that left wing. That's that. And another thing is how poorly Joselu and Rodrigo have been finishing as of late. They have been right in front of goal. They've been creating the chances, but the end product just hasn't been there for a bit. So that's a bit concerning. But I'm going to bank on them to get it right for this match day.
okay.
Yeah, we
Well,
could go into the next topic.
I do believe this game for United
Mhm,
is a must-win game in order for them to get out of the group stage, because I do not believe
mhm.
that they're going to beat Galatasaray away. So playing Galatasaray at
Really?
home, yeah, Galatasaray is actually one of the hardest places for any
Yeah,
physical team to go in
true,
terms of the
true.
flares and the fan being
Mhm,
extreme. I'm not saying that it's like impossible, but like I wouldn't be surprised
yeah,
if it
I
doesn't
know.
happen.
Mhm,
I would say this, given how Bayern played and given that scoreline, the Champions League is clearly different from um, your
league
domestic cups,
matches.
like, because you could be terrible in your league, good in Champions League,
Yeah,
because there's
yeah.
no way that United should be scoring 3 goals against Bayern Munich,
Mhm,
especially with that 11 that they fielded. So I expect them to beat Galatasaray probably 3-1. However, Galatasaray does have some deadly players. I believe, Mario Icardi missed a sitter on the weekend
mhm.
when they
I
attempted to
believe Zaha
recreate.
plays for them now, right?
Yeah, he does. Mario Icardi missed a sitter in which, the famous Messi layoff penalty to Suarez, I believe it is, where
Yeah.
you just pat and he missed. But Icardi, Zaha,
Mhm,
I believe, Fred, the Red, is playing there
mhm,
now. So who knows what could happen? But I do
mhm.
expect United to win that game.
I'd say 1-0.
Well, for United.
Yeah, 1-0 United.
Well, okay. Well, from there we could move on to. I don't believe Lens and Arsenal is a game that's going to be particularly
I think the
competitive.
major matchups would be in that group with PSG and
Yes,
Dortmund.
Dortmund and Milan is an interesting game. Dortmund is coming off a loss, I believe, against PSG,
Mhm,
and Milan has started Serie A in blistering form. Though they've lost one game, I believe, in six, and they're currently sitting
mhm.
in second behind, the people they share a
Yeah.
stadium with, Intel. But
Mhm. Yeah.
there's an interesting game. What do you think is your prediction?
For
What
Dortmund, I expect Milan to win this game, 2-0. I think they would look for a result, especially after that disappointing draw to Newcastle. I think it was a week or two ago.
yeah.
But I thought Milan were the superior team in that game, and they would have been disappointed not coming away with a better result. So I expect them to, try and make amends for that this week.
Yeah. I mean, Dortmund is playing at home with the yellow wall. But at the
Yeah.
same time,
Hmm.
it is. I do think that Milan is a better team. I don't
Yeah.
believe that Dortmund has anything to counteract a player like Rafael Leao coming at them, and
Mm-hmm.
I expect him to have a big game. I think Champions League nights are meant for players like Rafael Leao, and
Yeah.
I expect him to have a big game. I think this game might end 2-1 in favor of Milan. But
Mm-hmm.
this is, I do believe if Milan could have a really good result against Dortmund, which is also a hard place to play, they would be a team to look out for
Mm-hmm.
going forward,
Yeah.
especially given the fact that the next fixture in their group is Newcastle versus PSG,
Mm-hmm.
and how about that fixture.
I actually did follow, but I heard Mbappe tweaked his ankle, so would he be fit for that game?
That is a
Um,
good question.
if he is, obviously PSG.
Yeah, yep,
For
yep.
me,
He
I
is
think that would be the pick. But if he's not, it's just a more open game, I think, and I think Newcastle could actually steal it if Mbappe isn't there. I think he should play though. I don't think it was a serious injury.
I mean, it all depends. It's a home game for Newcastle. PSG are coming to UK. I mean, it's a different environment in terms of weather and so on. But I mean, Newcastle did score eight, I believe, in some game recently. But
Yeah,
I think if this
against
game
Sheffield, I think.
was happening maybe 2 years from now, we might be having a different conversation. But right now, I do believe
Hmm.
that PSG should be able
Yeah,
to dispense
yeah.
Newcastle. I say maybe 2-0 in this game.
Hmm.
There's also
Yeah.
Leipzig and City. Now, currently, Leipzig are at the top of this group, interestingly. Um, City are the overwhelming favorites, but I do not believe that Leipzig is a team that should be underestimated at all.
Underestimated. Hmm.
But
Honestly, like I'm just tired of this matchup. Like I feel like every year we see City versus Leipzig.
mm,
Um, it's it's getting to be a very boring matchup right now. But
yeah,
I think, maybe the fact that they've seen each other play so many times over the years, maybe Leipzig comes away and takes a point. Maybe
yeah, maybe.
hopeful dreaming.
Well, speaking of hopes and dreams, the hopes and dreams of many Miami Heat fans were shattered when Damian Lillard, it was announced
Uh,
that Damian Lillard would,
that was hilarious.
yes, that he would be traded to the Bucks. Now,
Hmm.
I'll turn it over to Chris for you to discuss the details of this trade. However, we must point out that the Miami Heat players complained of tampering and amongst many other things, but this trade actually came as a surprise to me. I would not even
Hmm.
lie.
It did come out of nowhere. I didn't hear anything about Milwaukee joining the race or anything. I just
Yeah.
kept hearing about Miami and Toronto.
Hmm.
I heard nothing about Milwaukee. So basically, Lillard went to Milwaukee as part of a three-team deal with Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Tumani Kamara at 2029 unprotected Milwaukee first and unprotected Milwaukee swap rights in 2028 and 2030 to the Blazers. And Phoenix, it lands Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. So basically, the the main thing for the Bucks, they have Lillard.
Yeah.
Portland, I think the picks are would be valuable, especially those swap rights in 2028 and 2030. I think they can be very valuable.
Yeah.
But I still feel and Aiton as well. Aiton, if he focuses on basketball this year, that's fine. And with Drew Holiday, they can trade for some assets as well because he's a player that many contenders would go for.
Yeah. Drew Holiday
But
is
I still feel
yeah.
I still feel like this. I still feel like Miami could have put a better package together. But I
Mm,
know Pat Riley. He would not have wanted to give away future players like
yeah.
Jamie Jack is Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, these guys,
Mm,
or his draft picks, as many as Portland may have wanted. So I do think it is a good deal for Portland in the long run, from a rebuilding perspective. Um, for the Bucks, obviously, they should be the favorites in the league right now, I think. I think they have a decent amount of depth. If they stay healthy, there is no reason why they shouldn't be the number one favorites. And as for Phoenix, Yusuf Nurkic and Grayson Allen are the players I'm looking at, but given Nurkic's injury history, I'm a bit skeptical about this for Phoenix. But I think for Phoenix, we just have to wait and see how it looks.
For me, in on the Miami end, I think I would have been uncomfortable giving away a player like Tyler Hero after the season that he had.
Mm.
Because you never know what could happen after you sign a player like Damian Lillard in terms of injury or so on. But I was actually genuinely surprised that uh, the Suns actually got rid of DeAndre Ayton given the moves that they made in the offseason. And
Especially getting rid of Monty Williams as well.
yeah, and
I would
getting
think.
what's the guy's name? Kevin Durant and all these offensive pieces. I
Yeah,
think this
Bradley
team
Beal.
might turn out to be one of the worst defensive teams in history because
Hmm
but
I don't
who
banking your
knows?
interior defense on Nurkic is a big, big risk in my opinion because you never know how healthy he's going to be.
Yeah.
And his defense isn't, in my opinion, the best for centers anyway. But I don't know, maybe their offense trumps the defense, something like that happens. But my issue is the fact that, they have a lot of players who are shooters, but they don't have that one distributor to settle the team, basically.
Yeah, true. But on the end of the Bucks, I do believe this trade probably came out of desperation or something after Giannis was hinted at.
After Giannis's comments, yeah.
Yeah. However, I do believe. I mean, personally, I would have wanted Damian Lillard to go to Philadelphia, but I didn't think that it would be
Hmm
impossible for Philadelphia to actually put a package together that did not give away someone like Tyrese Maxey, and
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been worth giving up
I
somebody.
think Philadelphia is this season away from going into full rebuild as well, honestly, especially after the falling out with Harden. I
Yeah,
think Philadelphia may look to rebuild now as well.
yeah, yeah. Um, so that's interesting, but I do believe if the not Nuggets, sorry, if the Bucks get probably one defensive piece in, this is a
Hmm
championship contending team at least.
If you look at it, I actually had the roster somewhere here, but the Bucks actually have a decent amount of depth. I think their starting lineup is basically set. I mean, you have Brook Lopez, who is a great rim protector, and he's like a modern center in terms of being able to
And
hit
yeah,
that 3-point shot. They signed Malik Beasley. He's not good defensively, and he wasn't good for the Lakers last year. He fell out of the rotation, but we know at his best what he can do from the 3-point line as well.
yeah,
They still have Pat Connaughton. They have Jay Crowder.
yeah.
Um, Goran Dragic as a backup point guard isn't bad at all. And they have Bobby Portis and, of course, Chris Middleton, who is an all-star. So I think this is possibly, they definitely have the best starting lineup, I think, in the league right now. Maybe their depth leaves a lot to be desired, but, when it comes down to playoffs, it's basically like an 8-man rotation anyway, 8 to 10-man rotation. So I think they have enough. Maybe, like you said, you need another defender, but as of right now, I think this is good.
True. But going specifically to Giannis and then we'll go to Damian Lillard. How do you think this um affects Giannis's legacy, to quote the popular meme? But in terms of okay, the Celtics still have their young core. They just paid off Brown, and you would expect them to be a contender. Philadelphia probably won't make it out to the second round again. And then you have teams like Miami that are capable of really high highs and really low lows potentially. And you would also have to take into consideration the age of the Miami players.
Hmm.
Um, but the we must not forget that only a few seasons ago, the Bucks were a championship team.
Championship team.
So adding Damian Lillard, who objectively, in the event that Steph Curry did not exist, we would be raving and ranting about him potentially being
Yeah,
the greatest shooter in terms of range at the very least.
yeah,
But he's
yeah.
also an underrated floor general in terms of his
Hmm.
ability to
I agree.
find open players. And I do believe on the pick and roll, with a big
Hmm.
man like Giannis, he would be more deadly than someone like Steph because Steph is more about movement and he's deadly on the
Yeah.
pick and roll too. But Steph's game has
Steph is
much
the
more.
focus of the offense. I think Lillard is capable more of getting other people involved into the offense.
Yeah.
I think.
So in terms of
Not saying Steph can't do that, but I think Lillard does that a
yeah,
bit
yeah.
better. I
And if
think.
you look at it too, I guess to the way the teams that Steph, well, the team that Steph has been on and the team that Lillard has been on were set up is
Hmm.
different. So I think this pick and roll between him and Giannis has the potential to be one of the most
Hmm.
dangerous pick
Yeah,
and rolls in the history of basketball
I agree.
because Giannis
Hmm.
for sure is going to be scoring 30 points a game this season off of that pick and
Hmm.
roll because defenders are going to be scared. So go with Giannis, knowing that Lillard is there, who could burn you consistently from three,
Yeah,
or the layoff of the pick and roll to Giannis, who two steps and a dunk is guaranteed points because of how big he is. And even though Gilbert Arenas was roasting him for training with Olajuwon, I think Olajuwon has the best footwork of any big man in the history of the NBA.
yeah,
If he could
yeah.
develop a
Hmm.
quarter of the coordination and skill that Olajuwon had, he could
Yeah.
develop his game in that way, it would be deadly. But speaking of Damian Lillard, now Damian Lillard has been Mr. Loyal, Mr. Portland.
Never run from the grind.
And I actually don't even think that this is him running from the grind because at some point a team
Neither me.
back their star and give their stars the tools necessary to win. You can't at some point a bad worker blaming the
Yeah.
tools is no longer applicable, and I don't believe it was
Hmm.
applicable to Damian Lillard. I think he put his all
Hmm.
into Portland, and I think he
I
might
agree.
have even stayed there too long, maybe 2 seasons too long. However, this potentially is one of the few trades that I've seen in which I was not upset about it happening at all. Like I didn't feel it was
Hmm.
like a super team create, even though with Middleton, if Middleton could play at an all-star level again, it's essentially a super team. However, I didn't see it as like, oh, this play is just ring chasing. I saw it as like
Yeah.
this is a necessary move, or else Lillard will
Hmm.
be a player that people would forget 5, 10 years from now because he one was overshadowed by Steph Curry's whole career, and two, he only ever been to one conference finals. So, what's the
Yeah.
ceiling of this team in your mind, and how do you think it affects Dame and Giannis's legacy potentially?
I honestly don't think there's any excuse for Giannis right now. I mean, he has put the Bucks under pressure by saying, "Listen, if there's a better situation for me to win, I'll leave." Right
Yeah,
now, I don't think there is a better situation for him. If he
mm,
claims to be as loyal as he claims to be, I think this
yeah,
is the situation for him. And credit to the Bucks as well. That's how you should treat your star players' words. I think. As soon as Giannis said, "Listen, I want this or else this," they picked up the phone and they didn't waste any time. So for me, I think this impacts their legacy a lot if they don't win right now. I mean, Lillard is a bit older right now, but
yeah,
I mean,
33.
all of this is barring injury, of course. But if they're
Mm,
all fully healthy, there's no reason why they shouldn't, be contenders and even win a championship in their time together here now.
yeah, I think that is the championship team. I mean, we don't know what trades could be made potentially that could change the whole landscape of the NBA.
Speaking of those trades, I actually think um the Bucks' biggest opponents in the East would now be the team that lands Drew Holiday, ironically,
Yeah.
because Miami and Boston are going for him. Last I
If
read,
if Miami lands him, that
if
team is going to be
Boston, I think
ridiculously
no,
good defensively. But if Boston
I
lands him, that is
honestly
a
think if
championship
Boston
contender.
lands him, that is, I think they could challenge because if you think about it, right? Boston was the best team in the East last year, and they had Marcus Smart, right? Smart is a great defender, but in addition to being a great defender, Holiday is also good from three
Yeah,
and a better distributor as
I
well.
think Holiday generally is just a better player than Marcus Smart. But
Yeah, yeah. In general,
it's in every like every facet of the game. The
yeah.
only thing is that Drew Holiday, like Damian Lillard, is 33 years old, and Marcus Smart will be
Yeah.
a young player. So this would
Mhm.
be more of a we need to win within the next 2 years kind of situation for
Mhm.
Boston. But Boston, I agree that if Miami gets him, it's just going to make an already good defensive team better defensively, but offensively they're still missing that spark. But on the flip side, Boston essentially gets an improvement on Marcus Smart, which could
Mhm.
potentially push them over that edge into being a championship team, going from being a contending team to a championship winning team. But all of these things considered, I'm not entirely sure that any of these teams could actually beat the Nuggets. Nonetheless, it still it still makes the NBA more interesting. However, I do think that Damian Lillard going to Miami would have been a mistake for both parties. I don't think that
Mhm.
Damian Lillard is what Miami need because Miami is a small team. Bringing in Damian Lillard makes him
I think
smaller.
it would have been a risk. I think it would have been a very big risk for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think he was the solution for them either, like the complete solution. I think you would have had to given up a lot to get him,
Mhm.
and I don't think you would have been compensated enough for what you had to give up.
Facts. And I think it may be argued that Bam should probably be shifted to a forward, and they need
Power
to get
forward, in my opinion, yeah,
yeah, they need to get
get
a
a center.
center footer to play center who is
Hmm.
a good rim protector. Ironically, like a Brook Lopez would be perfect for Miami, and Miami probably needs
Yeah,
a 3-point shooter. Someone like what JJ Redick was when he was in the league, or like Mike Miller, or those guys that played for Miami before Shane Battier and these kind of guys. I think that's what Miami
I
needs.
honestly think Jimmy Butler is an underrated distributor of the ball.
Mm,
I remember in the finals, especially against the Lakers in 2020,
mm.
when he was the one bringing the ball up, distributing and everything. I thought that was when Miami was at their most dangerous. So I think maybe you need to look at the option of, maybe either promoting Duncan Robinson to the starting lineup, play him and Hero with Jimmy, maybe a move Bam to the four, and you bring in a center and have Jimmy play your point guard, kind of like a Lakers 2020, like where we had LeBron at the point guard position.
Well,
But Jimmy's
technically,
younger and he can
yeah.
probably handle that better.
Technically, that would be bringing Duncan Robinson back to the starting seven because he was essentially a player that
Yeah,
was a
he was.
starter that got removed from the starting spot due to poor performances. But it would be very much
Yeah.
interesting to see him returning there. But I think this is the one trade that has
Or you
emerged.
have a Caleb Martin as well,
Yeah, but the problem
or
with players like
Cody
Caleb
Martin,
Martin,
whichever one.
we're not entirely sure if these players are going to play to the same level as they played last season. Because remember, these
As
are
they
a
played
lot of
last year. That's true.
Miami
That's a
has.
risk with every role player, I think.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Especially role players who did not come into the league as because a lot of role players were top for first round picks who subsequently became role players. But Miami has they have a lot of role players who are G leaguers and so on. So you never know if this is just them peaking or if this
Mhm.
is something else. But
While we're on the topic of the NBA, how do you feel about our Lakers? ongoing. We'll discuss this when the NBA gets closer, but
Mhm.
how do you feel about the Lakers right as of right now? Like their roster, do you think they could probably compete in the West, maybe contend for the championship?
Um,
If fully healthy, of course, which is a big if right now.
well, my thing is with the Lakers. I mean, I'm not completely okay with their roster right now. But
Mm-hmm.
on the big picture front, biggest issue for the Lakers will always be Anthony Davis and his health. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm to be honest, when Anthony Davis was playing with a prime DeMarcus Cousins, I thought Anthony Davis was potentially the best player in the league that season. As in, if he was playing in a bigger
Yeah.
market and if he was playing with better role
Mm-hmm.
players, he probably would have been an
That's
MVP
true.
candidate.
That's true.
And that's the potential, the ceiling
And he
of
still
Anthony
dragged
Davis.
that team to the playoffs,
Yeah,
even after
and I
Cousins
do
got
believe it's a
injured.
game off of the Warriors in their series. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that that team is a team that I always wanted to see do well, like with DeMarcus Cousins averaging
Mm-hmm.
28
Yeah.
and him averaging like 30. That team was an interesting team.
Yup.
But
Mm-hmm.
I do believe it's all on Anthony Davis. The reality is that given the stage in which of his career in which LeBron is in, Anthony Davis is supposed to be the man on the team. LeBron
Yeah.
James is still better than 99% of the NBA, but in terms of carrying the defensive load as well as the offensive load, that one is not fair to him
And he started to pick up his injuries as well,
as
his
a
fair share
result.
of injuries.
So
So,
I think LeBron's a
mhm.
player now that needs to be a passenger defensively and just allow him to
Yeah.
do his thing. Let him be Magic 3.0 offense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Anthony
I agree.
Davis, that only works if Anthony Davis could be
Mm-hmm.
the Kareem
Kareem
to that.
or
And
Shaq, whichever
good,
one.
exactly. But the problem is that when Shaq was Anthony Davis's age, or when Kareem was Anthony Davis's age, they were the best player in the league. They were at the
Exactly.
very least the
Mm-hmm.
most dominant center in their time. And objectively, in terms of big men, whether it be power forwards like your Tim Duncans or your Shaqs, Anthony Davis was supposed to be the perfect combination of the two as a guy who could play as a center and a guy who could
Yeah.
play as a power forward because he has that kind of skill. But his
Mm-hmm.
body's betraying him. I don't know if that's due to his own lack of preparation, but I believe the key is Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is the difference between a championship show because something that people don't realize, being fit for the playoffs doesn't mean that you do well because the team did not have that synergy playing together throughout the regular season. If you miss 40 games, that's 40 games that you did not get to play with your teammates, that you did not get the reps, you did not get to run the offense the way
Yeah.
that the offense is meant to be run. That's the Clippers problem.
Yeah.
When Clippers comes together for
100%.
playoffs, they're not, there's no synergy. But it's
Yeah.
all on Anthony Davis. No matter how good the role players are, the guy who's supposed to be the man now needs to show the league that he's capable of being a man and that he didn't ride LeBron's coattails to a championship. And that will be
One
essentially his legacy if he continues like this.
What I'm looking at for Anthony Davis though, if you look at it, he switched his position from power forward to center. And I think as a result, he has been taking a lot more hits at the five than he would have been at the four.
Yeah.
And we have signed two centers this offseason, Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood. So
Mhm.
depending on what we need from the team, I think one of those two need to start. One of them needs to start, definitely. So I would say move AD back to the four and
Mm.
move LeBron back to the one.
Mm.
Play
Well,
LeBron with shooters on either side, play AD at the four, and play either Wood or Hayes at the five. I would obviously probably be Wood because we tend to favor offense over defense.
yeah.
And Hayes offers more defensively than offensively.
Well,
And I
you're
think AD can also help defensively. Maybe Wood
yeah. I mean,
draws the
AD is
contact
actually a
and
very good
AD comes
defender.
as that help defender, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe in the closing lineup, you have AD coming in at the center, but that would be for the closing lineup alone, and that would, limit his hits throughout the entire game.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up the point about him taking hits at the center because I do remember, years ago, someone brought to my attention that a player like Clint Capella would torch
Mhm.
someone like AD. Not that Clint Capella is anywhere near the talent of Anthony Davis, but because of the style of his
Mhm.
play, because Clint Capella drops his shoulders shoulder into your chest every time you get the ball. And that's not something that Anthony Davis is comfortable with. So you're right. I do believe hiding him from the center position is key, especially in the West now, where the kings of the West are a team in which your best player is a center. So I do believe in order for you to get the best out of Anthony Davis, you probably need to play him as a power forward. You probably needs to be more Tim Duncan than Shaq.
Yeah.
But we will see. I mean, I don't like to pronounce too much on role players until I see them play with my own eyes, because a lot of times
exactly.
you acquire pieces
Because a role
and
player would shoot
yeah.
like 40% one season, and then they come and play with LeBron, they start shooting like 30.
Yeah, I
even
guess
that
too,
much.
it's also the idea of being a big fish in a small pond versus being a small fish in a exceptionally big. And objectively, the lights in LA are the brightest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, I mean, speaking of bright lights and American sports, there's no brighter lights than those that are shining now on Travis Kelce, or as Chiefs fans would say, that are shining on Taylor Swift. So, who is the real star? Who is benefiting from who? Is this even a real relationship? Is this just for the headlines? What
Listen,
is going
honestly, if you had told me we'd have been discussing this when we started this entire thing, I would have laughed.
on?
But, I think they're both benefiting. I think, the Taylor Swift fans are, learning about football. And, the football fans, I don't think they really care that much. They're just insulted by the fact that the Taylor Swift fans are saying, she basically is giving Travis Kelce a career.
Yeah.
Which is definitely not true, because he's on his way to becoming the greatest tight end of all time.
Yeah.
So that's ridiculous. But I do think, Taylor Swift is one of those people that I think is overrated by her fans, but overhated by her haters.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely fair.
She's one of. I mean, I love Taylor Swift, honestly. Like, I have a lot of her songs in my playlist that I listen to a lot of the
Blank
time.
Space still slaps.
Mean, Blank Space, Wildest Dreams,
Yeah, bangers.
But yeah, I'm not ashamed to say it. But like this whole thing with I don't think it's anything bad. Two people, they're just having a good time.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a bit toxic when some of the fans, like, I saw one of these people on Twitter posting a scene from one of Travis's practices, like, how in the NFL things can get heated, and I think shove the teammate or something, like, how it's a contact sport, you get heated.
Yeah, that's
and
just
they were like, wow, I'm very worried about Taylor in this situation. He clearly has a temper and all of that. Like, that was kind of hilarious for me.
Yeah. One thing I will say though is a good distraction from Jackson Mahomes and Patrick Mahomes' wife, who clearly is getting all the flack on Twitter from
I don't understand why though. Like for me, I don't get they can be a bit annoying, but
it's not that serious.
I don't see them as annoying as that. Like, it's not that serious.
Yeah, but
I think once it doesn't hinder Travis's performance on the field, I don't see a problem with it.
But honestly, I don't think it will, because I think he's a consummate professional and he's had public breakups in the past, public relationship issues, and his performance did not wave at all. But nonetheless, I mean,
and he played a good game the other night with her in attendance as well.
And the Swifties.
Anywhere close to his best, but he played a decent
but
game.
he's coming back from a slight injury, so the Swifties are in sports and the sportsmen are annoyed. That's the nature
basically
of life. And actually, if anything, this shows the pull of Taylor Swift and the Swifties, because
because his jersey sales have gone up to like 300%, I think.
Yep.
Yeah,
she had a blank space.
It's a lot, man.
And she's writing his name.
Exactly. Like, I don't love or hate her, right? You have to admit she has like one of the most faithful fan bases in the entire world.
And obsessive.
Because yeah, even going on to another sport, right? In football, I don't know if you follow this up, but Balde was leading the race for the Golden Boy votes, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And there was a quote that came up where he said he doesn't listen to Taylor Swift,
yeah,
and a Real Madrid fan posted, Swifties, we can't let this guy Balde get away with the Golden Boy votes. And all of a sudden, the votes shifted towards Bellingham.
yeah, yeah.
So
They,
like the
they.
Swifties were literally just voting for Bellingham just so that Balde wouldn't win.
I
And
saw it on
if
Twitter.
Bellingham does end up winning,
Mm,
I would have to give full props to them
mm.
because it would definitely be an injustice if Bellingham didn't win. So if they're the reason that justice is served, the Swifties are right with me.
Okay, so Just Swift presiding. Just Swift states that Bellingham should be the winner. But I mean, it was in Balde's wildest dreams to win the Golden Boy, but well, clearly it wasn't him that was the problem. It was the Swifties. So
It was
so we will see. We will see how that goes. But
the whole references, like even the commentators referencing it, and
yep, yep, yep,
even
yep, yep.
like the female sports writers for like Bleacher Report, and so they were talking about it on
They're having
TikTok.
a field day.
Like it's now their job to like make Taylor Swift references in sports, and like it's the best of both worlds for them and all of that.
Yep, yep. The Swifties are saying that they can show us incredible things, show us the level of which a stardom could. But in reality, nobody in the world is more famous than singers. If you look back in history at people like Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson, and now Beyonce's and Taylor
Yeah.
Swift. So that
Mhm.
intersection between sportsmen, because when you go to like Jordan and LeBron levels of popularity. If you could cross section that with an artist, you could become
Yeah.
exceptionally popular. Though I do not think that this
Mhm.
will be uh, long lasting, nor do I think that this will be the subject of her next album, which people seem to think will be the case. While it
No, I think the
lasts,
next album will slap if it is. Like
yeah.
you could imagine like the football references in that.
There's probably going to be a very interesting music video with some kind of memorabilia being burned somewhere, but it's gonna be interesting. There's this one meme though before we go that I found very interesting, in which somebody put a picture of Taylor Swift not looking so good and said that Travis Kelce was scoring sixes all around in
On and
reference.
off the field.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I saw that
yeah,
one.
so
That was just mean, man. That
yep,
was just
yep,
mean.
yep, 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 yep. So I'm sure the Swifties probably cancel that person as soon as
Yeah,
possible. But
that I would not want to make an enemy of one of her fans, to be honest. Like at all. Like I think I didn't realize just how crazy they were until like this week.
well,
And like the odd
The Swifties were telling you this whole time, Chris, why can't you see that you belong with them?
with
So, so you need to jump ship and get your Swifty shirt. Actually, here's what you should do, right? Get a Kelsey shirt and then draw X on it and put Swift. And
Swift.
yeah,
Considering it,
yeah,
football and Taylor Swift is a love story.
yeah, that we never knew we needed. Anyways, before we go, is there anything else you'd like to discuss, Chris?
No, I think that's a good note to end the night.
Well, we'll just say our salutations now and thank you to our dozens and dozens of fans all around the world for listening in. And please tell your friends because we have a blank space for all of them and they can write their names as
Facts.
one of our fans. So come one, come all,
Facts.
share, like, subscribe, tell a friend, call a friend.
Best sports podcast beyond your wildest dreams.
Yes, thank you so much for those who listened to the end. It was a pleasure.